Namaste, beloveds. This is Mother with Wisdom, and this is another Lionsgate transmission of some things that I have received and some things, excuse me for fidgeting, some things that I have been sharing on Facebook as well. I wrote this up and it's kind of long, so I'm just going to get into it. And beloveds, it is about the Elohim and E equals MC squared. And that E equals MC squared is going to be explained. As you know, E equals MC squared is the theory of relativity. And its energy. The E stands for energy, but I'm being told the E stands for the Elohim, and the MC stands for. I'll get to it. Let's just go there. That way, it'll get a lot smoother. Here we go. Elohim equals multiple consciousness squared by three sources of reference: dimensions, planes, mental thoughts, emotional feelings, biological body, alchemy, union of all three into one. So let me break that down, beloveds. What the Elohim means is multiple consciousness. And that multiple consciousness is multiplied by three sources of references. And another word for references is dimensions. And another word for dimensions is planes. And these three sources of references break down further into mental plane, mental body, mental dimension. That's your thoughts. Breaks down into emotional dimension, emotional plane, emotional body, which are your feelings. Breaks down into biological body, alchemy, union. Your biological body is your physical body. Your thoughts and your feelings create hormonal secretions and electrical nerve responses throughout your spine and your brain. And all of this creates a union, a dynamic union of all three working together. Now, whether they are aligned or not through conscious awareness with the spirit, that's a whole nother show. But for right now, we're just breaking down what the Elohim is. Okay. The word relativity, relative, relate, equals family, familiar, comes from, descends and ascends from, received, transmitted, transformed, and transmuted, by, from, and to. So the word relativity means that all is one, all is related, no matter the fragmented state, no matter the fragmented state of consciousness, no matter the seeming chaos, no matter the seeming separation or the illusion of division, or that the mind is over here and your feelings are over here and your heart is right here, or your heart is numb, or God is somewhere else. You are Elohim. You are multiple consciousness. And all of your consciousness is relative to your state of being. And that is what is coming forth in this Lionsgate portal. um, 2021, 8/8/2021. And me being sensitive, I'm gathering and receiving already and transmitting it and transforming what I received and transmuting it to you. So, Middle Earth has to have a higher Earth conscious awareness and a lower Earth conscious awareness. E equals MC squared, which is that 3. And beloveds, let me break that down. This again is that Holy Trinity, that 3, that triangle, that pyramid structure of the higher earth, which would be at the top, the middle earth, which would be at the middle, and the lower earth, which would be at the bottom. And this used the word conscious awareness. So higher earth conscious awareness, lower earth conscious awareness, middle earth conscious awareness. And this is about the evolutionary stages. At the base, you're dealing just like with the root chakras, all the way up to the crown chakra. You are ascending and descending at all times in your conscious awareness. That is what your thoughts and your feelings, that's their purpose. And you as a spirit being have to master your ascension and descension in the stillness. While everything outside of you or seemingly outside of you seems to be moving or in chaos, you are the stillness. You are the Elohim that is observing. Again, all of this is the phase 2 stage of observation. That is what I've been receiving lately, and that's what I've been sharing. So let me get back to this because this is a lot, and I haven't even gotten past the first couple of paragraphs yet. That's only the first 3 paragraphs. So let me get into it, beloveds. So, Spirit has me learning, observing, absorbing equals receiving, transmitting, transforming, and transmuting astral projection. And observing and absorbing, receiving, transmitting, transforming, and transmuting astral projection. So, basically, to break that down, in all that is relative as the awareness of myself and the Elohim, the inside and the outside from the very many different planes, the highest consciousness, the middle consciousness, and the lowest consciousness, all working at once. Time is irrelevant in this, although it seems past, present, and future. It is irrelevant. It is one. And what I'm getting is that we have to learn to observe. And in learning to observe, what you are observing is an ancient language. The language of being is observation and absorption. And for me, the term empath or sensitive one applies. And so as the frequencies, as the Aquarian age is pouring in more conscious awareness and purifying, and we're making space by clearing out all of our old thought patterns and behaviors, we're able to receive more. And we're able to learn this language just like babies, but we have to observe it first. You have to be able to see it. Just like a baby learns English or whatever language is spoken in that home or being bilingual. It observes, it listens. And it listens with more than just its physical ears, beloved, because all is relative. Okay. Astral projection. I got and I wrote this AST-RA-AL/EL astral. And I was told to look at the similarities between astral and Israel. And the word mirror came to me with question marks. From the perspective of Rudolf Steiner, and you can Google him. So I'm getting into steps of initiation and I'm told to stop. You fight against the powers and principalities, not flesh and blood. My spirit-led expansion on astral projection is taking me in a direction that I had never imagined it would. Serves me right for thinking I knew anything in the first place. El, Yahweh, and Elohim, the evolution of God in Israel and its theological implications. Abstract. It is often taken for granted today that the differing terms for God in the Hebrew Bible function as synonyms, although originally not all terminology used for God referred to the same deity. This article provides an overview of the terms El, Yahweh, and Elohim, which are all equated today, and a hypothetical reconstruction of when these terms came to prominence in ancient Israel. What does that mean? It means that the name of God has been merged so many different epochs and centuries and ages. And these names that were given have come to basically be descriptive words or adjectives, like El means Lord, and Yahweh is Jehovah, and Elohim is the plural form of these consciousness. So we need to understand once again, as I am receiving, transmitting, transforming, and transmuting this information, is that we need to observe the multiplicity. We need to observe that all conscious states are relative to the flow and the frequency of past, present, and future. And if we are to evolve higher, then we need to be able to access all of these stairs, so-called, by ascending and descending at will. Abstract. It is often taken for granted today that the differing, I read that, okay. This article provides an overview of the terms El, Yahweh, and Elohim, which are all equated today, and a hypothetical reconstruction of when these terms came to prominence in ancient Israel. After plotting and considering the contribution of each term to the development of monotheism in Israel, which ultimately laid the foundation for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the following analysis considers some of the ensuing implications for communications of faith today when relating to the differing faith traditions. So, beloveds, what this is saying is hypothetically, we are gathering these terms, El, Yahweh, and Elohim, and we're dating it back into ancient Israel before the religions that we know today were formed. And each one of these religions use these terms interchangeably in their sacred writings, and Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And that came from, I'll put the links in the video comments thing description. Okay, you fight against the powers of and principalities, not flesh and blood. Who are the Elohim? The answer might rattle your theology. Michael S. Heiser, we all have watershed moments in life, critical turning points, where from that moment on, nothing will ever be the same. One such moment in my own life came when I rediscovered the word Elohim. And beloveds, I was led to this particular site on the internet, and it just blew my mind, and I copied and pasted and knew I had to, like I said, I received it. I'm transmitting it, I'm transforming it, and I'm transmuting it. And what you do with it is up to you. It was in church on a Sunday morning while still in graduate school. I was chatting with a friend who, like me, was working on a PhD in Hebrew studies. Killing a few minutes before the service started, I don't recall much of the conversation, though I'm sure it was something about Old Testament theology. But I'll never forget how it ended. My friend handed me his Hebrew Bible, open to Psalms 82. He said simply, "Here, read that. Look at it closely." The first verse hit me like a bolt of lightning. God, Elohim, stands in the divine assembly. He administers judgment in the midst of the gods. Also Elohim. Same word used. God, Elohim, stands in the divine assembly. He administers judgment in the midst of the gods, Elohim. I've indicated the Hebrew word that caught my eye and put my heart in my throat. The word Elohim occurs twice in this short verse. Other than the covenant name Yahweh, it is the most common word in the Old Testament for God. The first use of the word in this verse worked fine. But since I knew my Hebrew grammar, I saw immediately that the second instance needed to be translated as plural. There it was, plain as day. The God of the Old Testament was part of an assembly, a pantheon of other gods. Does the Bible say there are other gods? Needless to say, I didn't hear a word of the sermon. My mind was reeling. How was it possible that I'd never seen this before? I'd read through the Bible 7 or 8 times. I'd been to seminary. I'd studied Hebrew. I taught for 5 years at a Bible college. What did this do to my theology? I'd always thought and had taught my students that any other gods referenced in the Bible were just idols. As easy and comfortable as that explanation was, it didn't make sense here. me. Something is going on. There we go. The God of Israel isn't part of a group of idols, but I couldn't picture him running around with other real gods either. This was the Bible, not Greek mythology. But there it was in black and white. The text had me by the throat, and I couldn't shake free. I immediately set to work trying to find answers. I soon discovered that the ground I was exploring was a place where evangelicals had feared to tread. The explanations I found from evangelical scholars was disturbingly weak, mostly maintaining that the gods, Elohim in the verse, were just men, Jewish elders, or that the verse was about the Trinity. I knew that neither of those could be correct. Wrestling with the Psalms 82 implication, Psalms 82 states that the gods were being condemned as corrupt in their administration of the nations of the earth. Pay attention to that, beloveds, because this again is where our conscious awareness needs to be refocused to the point of understanding that we are not at war with each other, with physical blood beings. We are at war with powers and principalities. Those same powers and principalities that instigated the separation at Babel with the language. I'm going to read that again just so it can be grasped the way it needs to be. Psalms 82 states the gods were being condemned as corrupt in their administration of the nations of the earth. So these gods had dominion, and they were being judged, as Psalms 82 indicated. They were all standing before the highest Elohim, or the highest group of the Elohim, or the highest essence, or the highest frequency of the Elohim, and he was administering judgment about the corruption that was being sown and allowed on earth. The Bible nowhere teaches that God appointed a council of Jewish elders to rule over foreign nations, and God certainly wouldn't be railing against the rest of the Trinity, Jesus and the Holy Spirit, for being corrupt. Frankly, the answers just weren't honest with the straightforward words in the text of Psalms 82. When I looked beyond the world of evangelical scholarship, I discovered that other scholars had churned out dozens of articles and books on Psalms 82 and Israelite religion. They left no stone unturned in ferreting out parallels from the psalm and its idea and the literature of other civilizations of the biblical world. In some cases, matching the psalm's phrases word for word. Their research brought to light other biblical passages that echoed the content of Psalms 82. I came to realize that most of what I've been taught about the unseen world in the Bible college and seminary had been filtered by English translations or derived from sources like Milton's Paradise Lost. Remember, we spoke about how you receive, how you transform, how you transmit, and how you transmute conscious awareness as a language. That is what this is about, and the observation of that language as being relative to all. Projection, hologram. Let me move this out. Let me just turn that on. Projection, hologram matrix system. Astral projection equals heaven's hierarchy. And beloveds, a hierarchy is, once again, you have that pyramid asserting itself. You have the tip top, that point, and you have the bottom, foundation, and you have the middle. You have all of these levels that you have to get to. Just like many of you have heard the word pyramid scheme. Funny how certain things are used, flipped. The scripts are flipped. What was once so sacred is being used in such a manner to scam or to, let me move that over there. Here we go. Or to trick or to lie or to lead one astray. Again, beloveds, keep in mind the excuse me for fidgeting and grounding. This is just so deep. So, excuse me, I'm feeling it all in my body. So, if you see me fidgeting, just understand what's going on with me. Again, this is so deep, and getting to the mirror, getting to the projection, getting to the hologram, getting to the matrix system, getting to the use of illusion, and understanding what you're observing is a language. It's not just images. You know how in Egypt they use hieroglyphics as a language. Those were images, those were symbols. So, beloveds, through this lion's gate, we're being told to observe everything as a language and to understand how certain images have been switched, flipped, transmuted, translated, transformed into something else. And in your observation, you need to receive, transmit, transform, and transmute them back to their original frequency. Okay, let me keep going. Heaven's hierarchy. The rulers of ancient Egypt were called pharaohs. In the language of ancient Egypt, the title was actually two words, Pera, P-E-R-A-A, which meant great household, great house, great household, pharaoh. The household concept for the ruling families of ancient Egypt was that of a dynastic bureaucracy. Pharaohs typically had large extended families. They frequently appointed family members to key positions of authority in their administration. The elite staffing of the king's governing bureaucracy typically came from Pharaoh's household. They were administrators, not lowly messengers. So we're being told the hierarchy of the Pharaoh's household, and that this household appointed powers and principalities within its jurisdiction. And each of those roles, each of those frequencies had its own potential, had its own role in the language of the household, so to speak. And beloveds, I want you to understand really what we're being given right now. Understand that what happened within the dynamics of these households, of these ruling classes. Understand what you're seeing as the observation of this language continued in our governments today, in our global governments today. It is still the same power and principalities at war with the language, with the basis of the language. Family is supposed to be unconditional love. But when you feel your role is not as good as so-and-so's role, or you feel slighted, or you feel this, or you are doing this and sleeping with that one and killing this one and plotting and scheming to overthrow this because you want more power and you want to live over there and not over here. This is the history of civilization. This is the language of civilization. And we need to view them in the images of their histories in order to change the narrative, in order to understand the relativity of being the Elohim, being amongst the Elohim. Raising that frequency and transmuting and transforming and healing that frequency. This concept and structure was well known throughout the ancient world. It spoke of layered authority, a high king, elite administrators who were often related to the king, and low-level personnel who served the higher levels of authority. Everyone in the system was part of the government, but authority and status were tiered. Now, we began this with Psalms 82, and that is the language, and that Elohim, God, the highest essence or frequency of God, had come to judge the other Elohim, the lower Elohim, who were responsible for the households upon earth, and judge them. Understand what we're being given, and I'm trying to break this information down as best I can. And is still very new to me, beloveds, as well. So I will be building from this in months and probably years to come. I'm feeling it that deep. The message is that deep. And like I said, this is the second phase of observation. And before we thought observation was just looking. But now we're understanding that observation is also listening to the language of what you see and interpreting it with your conscious awareness by understanding all is relative. And to judge it based upon universal love. Universal laws and unconditional love. There we go. Okay. Several Old Testament passages describe this administrative structure existing in the heavenly realm as well. Psalms 82 is perhaps the clearest and perhaps the most startling. The psalm refers to Yahweh's administration as a council The first verse reads, Elohim stands in the divine assembly. So understand that this Elohim, this God, is actually a council of beings. He administrates judgment in the midst of the gods, Elohim. So this council is over this other Elohim or council. So you're getting the hierarchies, you're getting the layers of the pyramid. And Psalms 82 is dealing with the top tier. And that top tier is the God that speaks to them as an assembly. Translating the word Elohim. You no doubt notice that the word Elohim occurs twice in this verse. You also probably recognize Elohim as one of God's names, despite the fact that the form of the word is plural. In English, we make words plural by adding s or es or ies, like the words rats, horses, stories. In Hebrew, plurals of masculine nouns end with I am. I'm going to say that again, beloved. In the Hebrew language, plurals of masculine nouns end with I am. So the Elohim is a masculine frequency. It is a plural masculine frequency. So this council is a masculine council. While the word Elohim is plural in form, its meaning can be either plural or singular. And what came forward to me as I was translating that, receiving it, transmitting it, transforming it, and transmuting it, is that this is where the term Father God comes from, or seeing God as male, comes from this Elohim, the noun form of the masculine noun of a plural. Okay. While the word Elohim is plural in form, its meaning can either be plural or singular. Most often, over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible, is it singular, referring to the God of Israel. Now, beloveds, I want you to, again, observe the language that is being used. This, what I'm reading, keeps referencing the Hebrew Bible, not the King James Bible, not the Coptic Bible, not the New Testament or the this and the that and the that and the this. It says the Hebrew Bible is speaking specifically of a language that needs to be observed and understood from that perspective. Most often, the word Elohim in plural in form is plural in form. Its meaning can either be plural or singular. Most often, over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible, it is singular, referring to the God of Israel. We have words like this in English. For example, the word sheep can be either singular or plural. When we see sheep by itself, we don't know if we should think of one sheep or a flock of sheep. If we put sheep in the sentence, we know that only one sheep is meant. The sheep is lost. Since the verb requires a singular subject, likewise, the sheep are lost informs us that the status of more than one sheep is being discussed. Grammar guides us. It's the same with Hebrew. So, beloveds, this is why grammar is so important in language, in observing language. We are taught these things early on, but many of us don't stick to the rules of grammar. We don't take it seriously. We don't use it to guide us. We don't see it as a defining tool or measurement, and it is. And the English language is a bastardized language. So it really behooves, that's the word that came, behooves us to get into the language more. Pay attention to the grammar. Pay attention to the root words, the origin of the words. Psalms 82, verse 1 is especially interesting since Elohim occurs twice in that single verse. In Psalms 82:1, the first Elohim must be singular, since the Hebrew grammar has the word as the subject of a singular verbal form. Stands. The Elohim stands. The second Elohim must be plural, since the preposition in front of it, in the midst of. So one stands, and one stands in the midst of requires more than one. Because if you're in the midst of something, you can't be, it has to be more than one that you're in the middle of. Requires, you can't be in the midst of one. The preposition calls for a group, as does the earlier noun assembly. The meaning of the verse is inescapable. The singular Elohim of Israel presides over an assembly of Elohim, which makes so much sense, beloveds, when you look at the Old Testament and you look at how Moses was led, you look at what was going on with Saul and everything, you understand. And when the first temple was built and the Shekinah dwelt in that temple, you have to understand the different terms, the different language used. It guided them as a cloud in the wilderness. Certain things allow you to understand that it was more than just angels, and that these hierarchies are myriad and myriad and myriad. It is beyond what a human being can imagine at this point. But we have to expand our conscious awareness of the language that was used in order to ascend higher in our conscious awareness itself. Judging the Elohim. A quick read of Psalms 82 informs us that God has called this council meeting to judge the Elohim for corrupt rule of the nations. Verse 6 of the psalm declares that these Elohim are sons of God. God says to them, I have said you are gods. Elohim. I have said you are Elohim and sons of the Most High. Benai Elion, all of you. To a biblical writer, the Most High, Elion, was the God of Israel. The Old Testament refers to him as Most High in several places. Genesis 14, chapter 14, verses 18 through 22. Numbers, chapter 24, verse 16. Psalms 7:17. Psalms 18:13. Psalms 4, chapter 47, verse 2. The sons of God, the Most High, here are called Elohim, as the pronoun you in verse 6 is a plural form in the Hebrew. The text is not clear whether all of the Elohim are under judgment or just some. The idea of Elohim ruling the nations under God's authority is a biblical concept that is described in some detail in the unseen realm. For now, it's sufficient that you see clearly that the sons of God are divine beings under the authority of the God of Israel. God presided over an assembly of gods. You see why the Psalms threw me for a loop. The first verse was God presiding over an assembly of gods. Doesn't that sound like a pantheon? Something we associate with polytheism and mythology? And beloveds, I want to make something very clear. Okay? The word Elohim is different from the word angels. Okay? So once again, we're talking about hierarchies. And in understanding the levels, the levels of the hierarchies, we were just given the word Elyon, Elyon, which is a Hebrew word. And it means most high. And this most high was a council. It was not a singular being, but it was the Most High Council. And this Most High Council was calling these lower councils into order about how they were administrating justice or life or rules and regulation, universal laws. Said it was corrupt. For that very reason, many English translations obscure the Hebrew in this verse. For example, the NASB translates it as God takes his stand in his own congregation. He judges in the midst of the rulers. And that's why a lot of people have a problem with the Bible, because of the many translations that are used. And the translations themselves changing the actual message in order to follow their own narrative, their own Christian or man-made narratives, their own agendas or way that they want religion to be observed. That language. There's no need to camouflage what the Hebrew text says. People shouldn't be protected from the Bible. The biblical writers weren't polytheists, but since Psalms 82 generates questions and controversy, we need to spend some time on what it teaches and what it doesn't teach, along with other passages that inform us about the divine counsel. Is God speaking to the Trinity? Many Christians who object to the plain meaning of the Hebrew text of Psalms 82 assert that this psalm is actually describing God the Father speaking to other members of the Trinity. This view results in heresy. I'm confident you can see why. The psalm has God judging the other Elohim for corruptions. So Psalms 82 verses 2 through 4, the corrupt Elohim are sentenced to die like humans in Psalms 82 verse 7. So they have been condemned, these corrupt Elohim, to die like humans. These observations alone should make any Christian who cares about the doctrine of God abandon this idea. It has other flaws. The end of the psalm makes it evident that the Elohim being chastised were given some sort of authority over the nations of the earth, a task at which they failed. That does not fit the Trinity. And beloveds, let me call into what is flowing in me with this is again the temptation of Christ when Satan led him to this high place and he offered nations wealth and material things to Jesus. And Jesus didn't say, that ain't your stuff. You can't give me something that's not yours. Instead, Jesus said, by every word of God's mouth. So you have to understand the hierarchies. You have to understand what is in place. And you have to understand, again, the words that are being observed in this time, such as elite, and this percentage, and that percentage, and this and this and that. We need to observe closely and be vigilant in our listening, in our receiving, in our transmitting, in our transforming, and in our transmuting. Are the Elohim human? Other Christians would see the problems with this first idea, try to argue that the sons of God are human beings, Jews to be specific. Some Jewish readers, who obviously would not be Trinitarian, also favor this view. Again, when you split the language, baby, there are some that are going to, you're fragmenting, you're causing fragments. And based upon the word and the vibration of that frequency, it's going to resonate with certain people. This is going to resonate with one. That side of it is going to resonate with another. This aspect of it is going to resonate with another, while another can look at it and see all of it together as being one, while the rest of them, no, that's totally different. Nope, 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 nope. So what we're giving during this Lion's Gate is very, very deep, beloveds. Let me keep going. This human view is flawed as the Trinitarian, is as flawed as the Trinitarian view. At no point in the Old Testament does Scripture teach that the Jews or Jewish leaders were put in authority over other nations. The opposite is true. They were to be separate from other nations. The covenant with Abraham presupposed this separation. If Israel was wholly devoted to Yahweh, other nations would be blessed. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Hebrews are also not by nature disembodied. I'm sorry. Whoa, that was deep. Dealing with astral planes, and that was a deep slip of the tongue. Humans are also not by nature disembodied. The word Elohim is a place of residence. Term. Our home is the world of embodiment. Elohim by nature inhabit the spiritual world. The spiritual world is the unseen world. That E equals MC squared is telling us about, again, the multiple planes. It is telling us, again, about the mental, the thoughts, about the emotional, the feelings, and about the biological, what happens in the physical body or home of all of this. the temple, the spiritual dwelling place. Humans are also not by nature disembodied. And beloved, what brought all of this astral travel stuff for me was at the age of 19, I had an outer body experience. I actually died and I observed and had conversations and could hear. I had conversation with spirit beings who were asking me what I wanted to do, and it was my choice. And I could hear the doctors in the room. I could hear my mother and my other family members in the room. And like I said, I was 19, and my daughter had not turned a year old yet. And I was all ready to go until my family started discussing who was going to take care of my daughter. None of y'all, none of you. And I couldn't go. I had to stay. So that is why this conversation is even taking place. This was spirit, like I said, leading me to this, to understand deeper my own self-inquiry. Who am I? Being able to observe that now from a more peaceful place outside of the mind's chaos and needs and demands, and coming to understand, as I shared in one of the card readings recently, I think it was the grandmothers that came through on the Aquarius moon reading series. And she told me that no longer was I to view the ego as an enemy, but to view it as a womb. And a womb is something that you develop in, and then you must be reborn out of, because you incarnated into that womb. And you develop certain stages, you go through certain processes, and then you are born or reborn. I am in a reborn state. I have been born again from that ego womb, so to speak, which is the lowest state of existence in the earthly human awareness. Let me keep going. Humans are not by nature disembodied, and that, like I said, outer body experience and being able to observe and hear and see and still be connected with everything. That's not disembodied. That is multidimensional. That is, whether you want to call it astral projection or astral travel or outer body experience, each one of those has their own definition, but each one is relative, beloveds, to a conscious state of being, existing. Humans are also not by nature disembodied. The word Elohim is a place of residence term. Our home is the world of embodiment. Elohim by nature inhabit the spiritual world. And that just took me to when Jesus came upon Legion. And Legion begged him not to just... The Legion begged for Jesus to allow them to go into the pigs. They needed a home to go into. They needed a place to inhabit. So when they can't agree to come out of this man, they needed to go into something. Divine blessings are clearly not human. The real problem with the human view, though, is that it cannot be reconciled with other references in the Hebrew Old Testament that refer to the divine counsel of Elohim. Psalms chapter 89 verses 5 through 7 explicitly contradicts the notion of a divine counsel in which the Elohim are humans. And so the heavens will praise you, your wonderful deed, O Yahweh, even your faithfulness in the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the sky is equal to Yahweh? Who is like Yahweh among the sons of God? A God feared greatly in the council of the holy ones, and awesome above all surrounding him. God's divine counsel is an assembly in the heavens, not on earth. The language is unmistakable. This is precisely what we'd expect if we understand the Elohim to be divine beings. It is utter nonsense if we think of them as humans. There is no reference in Scripture to a council of human beings serving Yahweh in the skies, Jews or otherwise. What Psalms 82 and 89 describe is completely consistent with what we see in Job chapter 38, verse 7, a group of heavenly sons of God. It also accords perfectly with other references to the sons of God as plural Elohim. The sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh. Job chapter 1, verse 6, Job chapter 2, verse 1. Ascribe to Yahweh, O sons of God. Ascribe to Yahweh glory and strength. Ascribe to Yahweh the glory due his name. Psalms chapter 29, verse 1 through 2. Something came up as I was reading that. Hold on a minute. Let me pull it back up. Again, Job 38:7 was God asking Satan, where have you been? And he replied, I've been walking the earth, observing. And God, the Elohim, said, oh, you see there's nobody like Job. And you have that whole thing come forth. And again, beloveds, what is being spoken to me right now is that the Elohim are the firstborn or first created ones. They are not the angels. They are higher than the angels. And the angels themselves have hierarchies. And if you get into the understanding of the hierarchies of the angels, you understand that there is a tier or a hierarchy of the angels that are called the powers and the principalities. Okay? And again, we're speaking about household, heaven as a house. House being your conscious awareness of all. Okay. Do these references describe a group of Jewish leaders, among whom, in the passage from Job, Yahweh's great adversary appears, leading to Job's suffering? The conclusion is obvious. Did Judaism evolve from a monotheistic religion? Many scholars believe that Psalm 82 and other passages demonstrate that the religion of ancient Israel began as a polytheistic system and then evolved into monotheism. I reject that idea, along with any other explanations that seek to hide the plain reading of the text. In all such cases, the thinking is misguided. The problem is rooted in a mistaken notion of what exactly the word Elohim means. Since Elohim is so often translated as God, we look at the Hebrew word the same way we look at the capitalized letters God. When we see the word God, we instinctively think of a divine being with a unique set of attributes, omnipresent, omnipotence, sovereignty, and so on. But this is not how a biblical writer thought about the term. Biblical authors did not assign a specific set of attributes to the word Elohim. That is evident when we observe how they use the word. So once again, beloveds, we're being told to observe the original usage, the original wisdom that said, write this down, versus the different translations and the different narratives, the different views, the different agendas, the different separations of the whole. Biblical authors did not assign a specific set of attributes to the word Elohim. This is evident when we observe how they use the word. The biblical writers referred to a half dozen different entities with the word Elohim. By any religious accounting, the attributes of those entities are not equal. Yahweh, the God of Israel, thousands of times. Example, Genesis chapter 2, verses 4 through 5. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 35. The members of Yahweh's council, Psalms 82, verse 1 and 6. Gods and goddesses of other nations, Judges chapter 11, verses 24. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 33. Demons, Hebrew, Shedhim, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 17. The deceased Samuel, 1 Samuel verse 28, verse 13. Chapter 28, verse 13. Angels or the angel of Yahweh, Genesis 35, verse 7. Elohim does not imply polytheism. The importance of this list can be summarized with one question. Would any Israelite, especially a Bible writer, really believe that the deceased human dead and demons are on the same level as Yahweh? No. The usage of the term Elohim by biblical writers tell us very clearly that the term is not about a set of attributes. Even when we see the letters God, we think of a unique set of attributes. When a biblical writer wrote Elohim, he wasn't thinking that way. If he were, he'd never have used the term Elohim to describe anything but Yahweh. Consequently, there is no warrant for concluding the plural Elohim produces a pantheon of interchangeable deities. There is no basis for concluding that the biblical writers would have viewed Yahweh as no better than another Elohim. A biblical writer would not have presumed that Yahweh would be defeated on any given day by another Elohim, or that another Elohim, why not any of them, had the same set of attributes. That is polytheistic thinking. It is not the biblical picture. Why the projection of duality? How the Bible writers talk about Yahweh, we can be confident that Yahweh stands above the Elohim by once again observing what the Bible writers say about him. and never say about another Elohim. The biblical writers speak of Yahweh in ways that telegraph their belief in his uniqueness and incompatibility. 1. Who is like you among the gods? The Elim, Elim, Yahweh. Who is like you among the gods? Yahweh. Exodus chapter 15, verses 11. 2. What God, El, Lord, is there in the heaven or on the earth who can do according to your works and according to your mighty deeds? Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 24. 3. Oh Yahweh. Hold on just a second. Okay, beloveds. I live in an apartment building and they were vacuuming outside my door, so I didn't want that to interfere with the quality of being able to hear what I'm saying. That I'm already just using my computer speaker, so I've observed that sometimes it's not as loud as I would hope it be. But let me get back to it, and I'm going to need to turn back on this light. Okay. Getting right back into it, beloveds. Biblical writers also assign unique qualities to Yahweh. Yahweh is all-powerful. Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 17 and 27. Psalms chapter 72, verse 18. Psalms 115, verse 3. Sovereign king over the other Elohim. Psalms 95, verse 7. Daniel 4:35. 1 Kings 22:19. Beloveds, I'm being corrected. What I said was all powerful. That's Proverbs 72:18, and Proverbs 115 verse 3. So, getting corrections here between Proverbs and Psalms. Creator of the other members of his host council. Let me go back to that because that threw me a little bit. Biblical writers also assign unique qualities to Yahweh. Yahweh is all powerful. Jeremiah chapter 32 verse 17 and verse 27. Proverbs chapter 72 verse 18. Proverbs 115 verse 3. Sovereign king over the other Elohim. Psalms chapter 95 verse 3. Daniel chapter 4 verse 35. 1 Kings chapter 22 verse 19. Creator of the other members of the host council. Psalms chapter 148 verses 1 through 5. Nehemiah chapter 9 verse 6. Job 38 verse 7. Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 19 through 20. Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 3. Deuteronomy chapter 29 verses 25 through 26. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 17. James chapter 1 verse 17. The lone Elohim who deserves worship from the other Elohim. Psalms chapter 29 verse 1. In fact, Nehemiah chapter 9 verse 6 explicitly declares that Yahweh is unique. There is only one Yahweh. You alone are Yahweh. astral projection, OBE, outer body experience. The Elohim are spiritual inhabitants. Just a few more pages, beloveds. The biblical use of Elohim is not hard to understand once we know that it isn't about attributes. What all the figures on the list have in common is that they are inhabitants of the spiritual world. In that realm, there is a hierarchy. And beloveds, as above, so below. And that is what is coming through in the Lionsgate transmissions. That is what is being received and observed. That it isn't about the attributes. It is about the actual realm that creates the hierarchy, which the hierarchy exists in. That is what is relative to our conscious awareness in this moment, in this Aquarian age. For example, Yahweh possesses superior attributes with respect to all Elohim, but God's attributes aren't what make him an Elohim, since inferior beings are members of that same group. And beloveds, rewind that, play it back, and get the full sense of it. Yahweh possesses superior attributes with respect to all Elohim, but it's not God's attributes that make him an Elohim. And that is since inferior beings are also members of the group Elohim. The Old Testament writers understood that Yahweh was an Elohim, but no other Elohim was Yahweh. He was species unique among all residents of the spiritual world. So he is the highest conscious awareness that there is. And this is the conscious awareness that had no beginning and no ending, beloveds. And the rest of the hierarchies are firstborn. These are the Elohim that are firstborn. They come from the one, and they're all relative to the one because they all have the same potential. But Yahweh is unique in he has never diversified himself. This is not to say that Elohim could not interact with the human world. The Bible makes it clear that divine beings can and did assume physical human form and even corporal flesh for interaction with people, but that is not their normal estate. Spiritual beings are spirits. 1 Kings chapter 22, verses 19 through 22. John chapter 4, verse 24. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 14. Revelations chapter 1, verse 4. In like manner, humans can be transported to the divine realm. Example, Isaiah 6, chapter 6. But that is not our normal plane of existence. As I explained earlier, the word Elohim is a place of residence term. It has nothing to do with a specific set of attributes. Are the Elohim real? Those who want to avoid the clarity of Psalms 82 argue that the gods are only idols. As such, they aren't real. This argument is flatly contradicted by the scripture. It's also illogical and shows a misunderstanding of the rationale of idolatry. Also, why would God be standing in the midst of idols, condemning them? With respect to scripture, one need look no further than Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 17. They, the Israelites, sacrificed to demons, Shadim, not God, Eloah, to gods, Elohim, whom they had not known. The verse explicitly calls the Elohim that the Israelites perversely worship demons, Shadim. This rarely used term, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 17, Psalms chapter 106, verse 37, comes from the Akkadian Shadu. In the ancient Near East, the term Shadu was neutral. It could speak of a good or malevolent spirit being. These Akkadian figures were often cast as guardians or protective entities, though the term was also used to describe the life force of a person. In the context of Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 17, Shadim were Elohim, spirit beings guarding foreign territory who must not be worshipped. Israel was supposed to worship her own God. Here, Eloah, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 25. One cannot deny the reality of the Elohim Shadim in Deuteronomy 32, verse 17. Without denying the reality of demons, scholars disagree over what kind of entity the Shadim were. But whatever the correct understanding of Shadim might be, they are not pieces of wood or stone. Scholars of Paul's first letter to the Corinthians know that in the apostles' warning to not fellowship with demons, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 20, Paul's comments follow the history of the Israelites described in Deuteronomy chapter 32. He warns believers against fellowship with demons on the basis of Israel's failure in worshiping other gods. Paul uses the word D-A-I-M-O-N-I-O-N, daimon, one of the words used frequently in the New Testament for evil spirit. Beings, to translate Shadim, Deuteronomy 32:17. Paul knew his Hebrew Bible and didn't deny the reality of the Shadim, who are Elohim. And this was a blog from the .logos.com, who are Elohim. And I'm going to put that link in the description as well, beloveds. And I know that was a lot to take in, but it is, this is the time. And when I say the time, I mean it is the relative opportunity to begin gathering wisdom and digesting, receiving, transforming, transmitting, and transmuting, and feeding yourself and digesting the wisdom of it. And beloveds, this is being given to us because the necessity of times. And there's big changes ahead of us simply because this knowledge is being revealed again into our conscious awareness. So it gives us access to tools that are only in hierarchical reach, or you have to be a certain level, vibrating a certain level, in order to get this, to grasp this language and understand what's being given to you at this time. And understand that what you're being given is what you can digest at this time. You're not being given more than what you can handle, beloveds. But it is time to observe with vigilance so that you know what's going on around you, so that you are not so caught up in the chaos of the personalities of the ego womb. And if you want to call that ego womb the third dimension, feel free. But find yourself reborn out of that third dimension, which is that chaos realm. It's time to separate. It's time to be reborn from that. And there are many who are not ready and who will remain in that frequency. But as you expand, there are a lot of cells, there are a lot of selves, there's a lot of energy that is going to depart from your frequency, that's going to just vanish, that's going to free you up so that you can rise higher, so that you can receive more, so that you have actual teeth to digest what you need to digest, so that you can grasp the tools to know instinctively and intuitively what to do with them. Okay, beloveds, that is it for this particular video. And again, I want to thank you for listening. If you have questions, please post them on the YouTube page and I will get to them. Namaste, beloveds.